So yeah, breaking free from the AI program, first you have to realize what you're in, what you were born into. And when you wake up to that, it's easy to break free then. I mean, you can't do it in your own power. God has to do it. But notice, I'll give you an example. Notice the typology of the land here. There's a hill. There's probably a creek there where the water, I don't know, well, it's not a creek. It must be draining pretty good. There's a drain right there. The typology of the land, right? If you look at the land, there's a typology. They call it the typology of the land. You got flat land, you got hills, you got different typology, right? Now, it's the same word so that when they describe the typology of the land, it's the same word that they use in the typology of writing. Now, why would they use the same word talking about somebody writing something, and there's typology in their book, in their movie, in their writing, and they use the same word for a book or a movie or a script, the typology? I was just thinking about how nice it'd be to have a camper on the back and just travel all over the place. Look at that, the camper pulls it, shows above. And so the typology in a book or a script, and then they use the same word for the typology of the lay of the land. What's that about? Well, it tells you that this is a book. If they use that word to write a script or a book or types and shadows in a book or a writing or a concept or an idea, that tells you this is a book. Now, what's happening here, the typology of the land points back to Christ. Everything does. Like if there's a hill here or a mountain here and a mountain here, and the water comes down through the middle, there's a word for that, and I know it, and I just went out of my mind. Watershed. So that's called a watershed. So people have a watershed moment, right? So the hill goes here, another hill's here, and the water's flowing down, and on the other side there might be water flowing down. It's a watershed. It's called a watershed. There's a watershed moment, a transition. So anyway, God has written in the land over there in Israel, the Fertile Crescent. The word crescent goes back to love, actually. Crescendo. The word crescent goes back to crescendo. Now I'm doing this off the fly. I'm not taking notes. I just know this stuff because I've done my research for 10 years, and I studied words every day for 10 years, and I meditated on them. So crescent goes back to C-R-E-S, crescendo, to rise up. And that's why when they say the crescent moon, the tip, we're moving towards the crescendo, or the tip, or the highest point where Jesus is being revealed in all things. In a musical compilation, there's a crescendo. It's coming up to that last point. And so the crescendo, or the crescent point, goes back to love. God love. So the whole world will realize that God gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes him should not perish but have everlasting. God's not trying to hide it. It's right here in front of you. It's actually encoded in everything. And so the crescendo, or the crescent, is Jesus getting the glory in all things. He's holding it all together. Everything that you look at is being held together by Jesus. The human is really kind of dumb. The human's dumb. Only thing you can think in is cut, turn, union, and flow. You can't think outside of that. Those are the four root words of this reality. And they might be the four root words of everything. But most people live their whole life not looking for the source code or the truth, and the truth's right in front of us. And I had to pretty much beg God to show me, and he showed me. And so if you look at the clouds, they follow a pattern. When there's a cumulus cloud, you see a bunch of them. There's like 4 or 5 different kinds, 4 kinds. I think there's 4 kinds of clouds. You can tell if it's going to rain by the clouds, right? Usually. You know a chemtrail when you see one. But if the typology in writing is true, and the typology and the lay of the land is true, that means you're in a book. When you wake up to the fact that you're in a script, your script, and you think your life, you think you're doing it, you think it's you, but it's really not you. It's all pre-planned. Those leaves, those individual leaves are focused on their little piece of the pie and the wind blowing or whatever. But each leaf looks like the rest of them. That leaf right there, he's having a hard time out on the edge. But he's no different than that leaf over there who's out on the edge. But he don't know that person's over there. It's the same problem. The wind is blowing, the storms of life are blowing. That leaf right there is having the same problems as that leaf over there, but they don't even know each other exists. They don't even talk to each other. And there might be some kind of quantum thing going on with trees, probably is, but you know what I'm saying. And so, same with the birds. I showed you how all the birds were programs, and the cats and the dogs, they all did the same thing. So the human's the same way. Now, the difference between being an AI flesh mind human versus awake and free, because the AI flesh mind is a slave. They're slave to their sin. They're slave to death. They're slave to hypocrisy. They're slave to almost anything. They can become a slave. They worship what kind of bottled water. I mean, this is really a slave right here. They worship what kind of bottled water they drink. I mean, that's a slave. That's a slave to the hilt. I only drink such and such bottled water. I mean, you're a slave. Really, you're a slave. To really think that some bottled water is worth that, when you don't even, if they're all doing reverse osmosis, what I've found out is reverse osmosis takes the minerals out of your body. Anyway, yeah, but they put minerals back in. Yeah, whatever. That's what they tell you. Who knows? Yeah, there's certain plastic you shouldn't drink. I understand that. And there shouldn't, certain plastics you shouldn't drink out of. I agree with that. I understand that. But if you want to cleanse your kidney, do a fast, drink some, take your water and clean it yourself. Put a filter on it out of your faucet and clean it yourself. And get you some magnesium and phosphorus and calcium and all that. Anyway, back to what I was saying. In order to wake up, you got to see what you're in. And one way to do it is look at the types and shadows that are encoded in all things. What is the type and shadow of this highway right here? What's the typology of this highway? So you got people that are flowing, they're moving this way, and you got other people going this way. And you got them 3 trucks following after a pattern. So you can actually see patterns in the traffic. There's a white truck. Now you're going to see a black truck, or probably a black one. We just saw a white truck. We're probably gonna see a black one. Well, there it is right there. The cab. I don't know if you can see it or not. See it? There's a black one. So